From June 1984, it's our last game this episode, Hogan's Alley. The game that's so complicated it actually requires a individual sort of training screen that shows you what targets to hit and what targets not to hit. Hogan's Alley is, once again, a light gun game. The object here is to, well, basically shoot the bad guys. This is sort of like a training simulator here for cops or something like that. These little cardboard figures slide out, and you want to shoot the ones that look villainous and not shoot the ones that look like friendly old men or little ladies or cops. You'll look down at the bottom there, you'll notice there's a miss counter. You can only miss so many times. That means hitting the wrong target or not hitting the right target. I think you can get about 10 misses and then the game ends. So you might be wondering, what exactly does the name Hogan's Alley mean? Well, a Hogan's Alley is sort of a general term for these firearms training places here. There actually was an original Hogan's Alley. I believe it was designed by the US military. You'd go in there and suddenly various cutouts of people would pop up and you'd have to shoot the right ones. I guess this was to train your reflexes and judgment when it comes to handling a firearm. You've probably seen things like this maybe on TV or movies where someone has to train to become an FBI agent or a cop or something like that. I believe that the FBI had a Hogan's Alley in place about the same time this game came out. The police officer here is sort of interesting. He's smiling. On the other hand, he's also sort of holding his billy club and putting it in the palm of his hand, almost like he's kind of thinking he wants to smack you on the head with it. He does seem just a bit menacing. Okay, so then there's the Hogan's Alley B option. Here, instead of a standard shooting range, you're actually in some sort of alley mock-up, and the little figures appear in the windows and doorways and try to shoot at you. It's actually an awful lot like one of the options in Wild Gunman. Even at this stage, Nintendo is not above reusing the same ideas. And this is probably a bit more interesting than the first option. There's a bit more variety, you have actual backgrounds in it. One thing I've always wondered, that one gangster, is he dressed up wearing a tuxedo? It was nice of him to put on such a formal get-up for this occasion. Now one other thing that is quite notable here is that, as the scene switches, you'll see what appears to be the earliest instance of sideways scrolling in a Famicom game. One thing about the Famicom, it was designed so that it was very efficient at sideways scrolling, something that some of the other machines at the time, like the MSX computers, really could not do. When you think of the system, you tend to think of all those scrolling at games like Super Mario Bros. It's a little unusual that the Famicom has been out in the market for a year, and this is the first game that we've seen that actually utilizes scrolling. Well, there's one final variation here, and it's called Trick Shot. This is where you shoot at cans and try to keep them sort of, up in the air, and get them to land on a platform. You'll then get some points depending on which platform you land them on. And why does the music from this sound like something from an old Small Faces song? Maybe it's just a coincidence. Okay, so that wraps up the last game this episode. So what did we learn here? Well, while none of these games are exactly bad, they're all reasonably well made, none of them are really that exciting. I think probably the game that most folks would remember would probably be Duck Hunt. Nothing wrong with Duck Hunt, it's just a very simplistic game. It was something that was kind of good to pull out at parties or something for a little bit of fun, but it's not really a game that I think people would normally put on their list of all-time favorite games or anything like that. Of course, a few of these games, such as golf and mahjong, ended up being very successful, at least in Japan. But for most of us, I think we'd still sort of think of the Famicom as being in sort of an experimental stage at this point. It hasn't really found its groove yet. You might say that the really interesting things didn't start to happen until 1985.